Good morning, everyone. This is John Kogan. I'm the CEO of Performative, the online community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. First, I'd like to welcome everyone to this morning's webinar entitled Leveraging Technology to Drive Strategic Decisions. As the role of the finance organization continues to evolve, the Office of the CFO now has much more ownership of technology adoption across the enterprise. So how do today's senior finance professionals drive technology adoption to produce results in the face of expectations to do more with less? Finance leaders need to not only understand which systems his or her staff are considering, but what employees across the enterprise need in order to maximize productivity, support growth, and drive profitability. This webinar will illustrate best practices in moving finance and related systems into the cloud and talk about how finance leaders can succeed in leading the adoption of technology that will offer their companies the highest ROI. A few items before we get started this morning. First off, I would love to thank our sponsors, Host Analytics and Baker Tilly, for helping us make this event and everything we do at Performative not only possible but free. Everything we do for our users, whether it's online, offline, at events like this, is free for the users. And for that, we thank the likes of Baker Tilly and Host Analytics, two companies who are steeped in the issues we'll be talking about today. Next up, a quick welcome to Performative. For some of you, this is your first Performative event, maybe your first brush with Performative at all. So a couple quick words about us. Performative is the largest and fastest growing online resource for senior finance and related professionals. We reach over 500,000 CFOs, controllers, treasurers, and the like, actually every level within these functional areas on a monthly basis. And what we do simply is we provide a platform upon which these folks talk to one another, share knowledge, and help answer questions and get work done. So it's a wonderful resource coming from a long-time CFO, many-time CFO myself, something I wish I had during my career in finance, and it's all completely free and noise-free. No ads, no self-promotion, no one selling anything. It's just peer-to-peer knowledge exchange. So we welcome you to check us out at Performative.com, and we're happy to have you here with us this morning. Now, a few quick housekeeping notes on about today's event. First off, a link to today's presentation and a video recording of this webinar will be sent out to all attendees within 24 hours of the event, and is actually already posted on Performative.com. So if you go to Performative.com/resources, you can just download this presentation right now, and we will also email you a link so you have that for the future. We are providing CPE credits today. So most folks have probably pre-checked the I would like CPE credit box when you registered. If you did not, don't worry. Please simply contact Tanya Walsh. You can see her email address right there. She runs our CPE program. She'll be happy to answer any questions, get you taken care of. So if you did pre-register, don't sweat it. Your CPE certificate will be coming to you within 48 hours. If you neglected to do so, please reach out to Tanya. Next, we would like this to be an interactive event, so please do ask questions as we go today. If you'll take a quick glance at your GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see that there's a section there entitled Questions. Simply ask your questions at any time today, and then the last thing we'll do actually in today's webinar is we'll have a Q&A session with the two speakers. And this will be your opportunity to get your questions specifically answered. So feel free to ask questions at any time today, and then we'll get to them during the Q&A section of today's event. And then finally, at the end of today's webinar, you will be prompted to take a quick survey. It's literally 1 minute. We'd love to know what we can do better the next time. We're always looking to improve, so your feedback and suggestions are very welcome. It's all just multiple choice stuff, and it's very quick and easy. And we also make it easy to request connection with either of today's speakers, or both. So with just the click of a mouse, we'd be happy to help introduce you to today's speakers if you would like to follow up with them directly. So all of that is on the survey after the event. So we appreciate you giving us the extra minute at the end, and we thank you in advance for that. Now today we want to talk about a number of items related to technology and the finance organization. And it's something that we clearly see going on at companies large and small across the country, is that the finance organization, to a greater extent than ever, is owning technology not just for their own use, but in many instances across the organization. It's far more popular these days for the CIO to report up through the Office of the CFO, and the Office of the CFO is being asked to drive technology implementation in order to improve the bottom line of the company. They're being brought into this area that traditionally maybe we touched or we had some input on. Now we're really in the driver's seat in a lot of cases. So today we're going to be talking a lot about technology and how finance plays a central role and how the cloud can play a central role in the company's adoption of technology. And to get us going on that front, first up is Joe Ritchie, who is a director in the consulting group at Baker Tilly, Virchow & Krause. Joe has been with Baker Tilly since 2009, and Joe's career spans the past 30 years. He started out in private industry with 3 publicly traded companies in finance and operational leadership positions. The remaining half of his career has been consumed working with global management consulting firms, where he managed teams to solve enterprise operational challenges through process and technology-oriented solutions. And with that, Joe, I invite you to take it away, please.
Thank you, John. Good morning to everyone. So I have you for the next 20 minutes about that. And so let me review our topics for today. Up on the screen, real carefully, we want to talk about what does it mean to converge in the cloud. There are 4 forces in the new business world, and it's having a major impact on business processes in the new market. In order to drive strategic decisions by leveraging technology, what is the real cost of technology? And with that, should we be concerned about security and compliance? And can we achieve new business capability needs? I want to talk about first mover advantage. I'll have an example regarding how a company has changed a very simple business process. Then, as we close out my session, where is your organization today? Self-assess yourselves, and I'll leave you with some key messages. So, converging in the cloud. I think at some point this will get to a point where people are tired of hearing it. I always like to start a conversation and provide some market facts for the audience to get a better sense of what is converging in the cloud. So International Data Corp is a global market research firm. So they provide everyone in the marketplace with intelligence regarding information technology, telecom, consumer technology, and other trends. So IDC expects the software as a service market to grow to $45 billion by 2014. That's a great compounded annual growth rate of about 25%. So it's real. It's occurring. There was a recent study by IDC that said 80% of new commercial enterprise apps will be deployed on cloud platforms. It is trending in that direction for certain. When we talk about the mobile market and software as a service, so in year 2011 and growing, it was like $1.2 billion reached in the mobile market. That's on the low end. It's trending to $3.7 billion by 2016. Just one other fact before I jump in here about the items converging in the cloud. Our own U.S. federal government believes the cloud computing marketplace is going to grow about 16% in the next 5 years. And the federal government looks to have a $10 billion landmark by 2018 in terms of spend. We've been reading in the news about other companies buying up cloud software as a service companies to get an entrance into the marketplace. But here are 6 things I would like to leave this audience with today about items converging in the cloud. And let me start on the upper right-hand side. In-memory solutions is really important. It resonates in terms of processing. Today, perhaps your company does already have in-memory solutions. And if you're in the IT or the finance function, you might already know the cost to maintain that in-memory capability. There's also the geospatial data component to this. And we also read in the news today about privacy and tracking people and satellites. However, today it's open in terms of how companies are using geospatial data. Easy to say, social media, been here for 10+ years. We see it going to social enterprise, the next level, into companies, and it's growing. Even my father, who's age 70 and 75, has a Facebook account. So it's out there for all generations, which I'll talk about later. The mobile market. Look at, not so long ago, all the different smartphones and tablets and how we interact with business. The mobile market is huge. Remember I said that was growing to about $3.7 billion. Analytics is key, right? Carey will talk later about host analytics, but in terms of having information available, access to it, and able to help you to innovate. And on the upper left-hand corner, right, big data. There aren't too many tools out there that will help you sift through the cloud, all these different sites to bring down big data. If you read the quote here at the bottom from Eric Schmidt from Google, every 2 days we create as much information as we did up to 2003. It's no longer terabytes, it's exabytes and growing. So cloud computing solutions are becoming mainstream, whether your organization is expecting them or not. Survey inside your company. How many of your employees are bringing their own device? I'll talk more about BYOD later on how it's introducing mobile and cloud-based applications to your organization and what you should be mindful about. We see time and time again the business unit executives in your companies might be buying cloud application software with procurement cards and bypassing IT. So we've been helping others and encouraging other organizations to get ready to embrace these items that are converging in the cloud. So we see 4 major forces in the new business world. So you have rapid technology, you have macro forces, highly competitive landscape, and a dynamic workforce. So now change is something many businesses have gotten better at accommodating for the last few decades. There's been change 101. I call that facilitating the change. We've become really good with change 201, performance-driven change. Right? So that goes beyond just facilitating the change, but now you have targets, you're tracking activities, you're recognizing new processes. But the 4 forces are a special kind of change phenomena, which is the most troubling for all firms, because they're interacting simultaneously. Change 101, change 201 help us to isolate it. Right? You can always deal with rapid new technology. You can always deal with competitive landscape. But the new change that's occurring is when these 4 forces are coming together, and we call that a change phenomena. And that phenomena is really an opportunity for your company. It's an opportunity to introduce innovation. Innovation will help you to rethink how you're conducting work, how you're interacting with your customers, your associates, with all external parties. And it's going to occur in a rapid deployment of core and enabling technologies. And that is change 301, change in the cloud. That's where we see these dynamic forces coming together and people not ready to address that. So change in the cloud, right, prepares organizations to innovate. Now you might say, well, no, we know how to do that. But it's innovation that happens more frequently and in smaller increments to keep up with the dynamic workforce. It also addresses a shift in responsibility. It's a shift that's occurring from IT to the business. It also assumes there's an increased emphasis and a use of collaborative tools, the social tools that I mentioned earlier. And there have to be different approaches to manage those processes. So change is something that you need to be mindful about. It is frequent, more innovative in smaller chunks. If you look at this slide, look at macroeconomic forces. Do we think government regulation is going to decrease? That's not the market sentiment. We think it's going to increase. We think about requiring review of all business processes from a competitive landscape. With the introduction of cloud and software as a service, competition has intensified. You can have someone in a different foreign country, okay, that's competing with you right in your own state. And only a few years ago, that didn't occur. And let me close here with the dynamic workforce. Think about how many generations are at your company. We think you can have 4 generations in the workforce from baby boomers to millennials. Now bring in your own device and factor that into all those generations and on how to conduct your business. So I close here with, is your organization proactively dealing with each of these changes, each of these major forces? So I promised an example. I'm going to talk about how the cloud has impacted the auto loan quote. And if I keep on track here, talk about a personal experience with a recent mortgage refinance. So here, if you look at how things used to be done, you used to go to a credit union, you filled out some forms, you provided physical evidence of your income, you might wait several days. Hey, I got approved, that's great, okay? So if you're working inside of with a credit union as a lender, they would go through those activities as shown on the screen. They meet with you, they review your forms, they verify, get credit scores, run through their model, right? Going forward, the applicant, right, they're out there asking their friends and family, hey, did you recently buy a car? What was your experience? And you know how they're doing that? They're going to social media. They're out there on Facebook. They're out there tweeting with followers, asking, you know, hundreds to thousands of people their experience. Then if they got all that information, they very quickly, they go to on-site reviews. Yelp is a place some people go. So they research people's experience. They can also research rates. It's all out there in the cloud, right? You can go to bankrate.com, int.com, look for information. Very quickly, you're filling your forms out online. You can scan in your income, documents, your employment. You get several quotes within minutes. Real personal, from a mortgage refinance, I went through this process and I was approved in 10 minutes. And I was able to use different cloud computing applications I use on a personal basis that are also available for business by just bringing in my digital documents. So tomorrow, as we look at the auto loan quote, you've got the VeriSign process. You don't have to go into the credit union, right? It can all be communicated through smartphones and devices. So as a finance person, you should want to understand, right, how this is going to impact your business. Are you prepared to support this type of dynamic workflow? Are you considering the investments that your company will need to make to support this dynamic enterprise on how you rethink work, how you interact? Because there's so much information that you're also procuring, at least this credit union, as an example, is providing. They can use that in financial forecasts. There's some big data analytical tools, right, that you can be used. Now, not only this, as you think about how you support this process, what about your labor cost strategy? So here, I probably advance you to think about the credit unions, how they got their information, and tomorrow everything is online and being accomplished through mobile devices. No secret here, right? More and more people, they're interacting on Facebook and Twitter, they're smart devices, they're on the go, they could be on a train, they could be walking the street. I just encourage my finance colleagues just to understand the impact to your business and bring it back to change 301, right? Because now, working in the cloud, you've transitioned some of your IT infrastructure. You might have changed some intermediaries. You now have heightened controls about data governance. So just think about how you're going to allocate your resources, change some of your risk control matrices. Think about those data controls. Now, I wanted to talk about the real cost of technology, and there's a couple of different models out here. So this graph here is talking about your typical on-premise software provider, server, everything is right there on your premise. You're paying maintenance and license fee. As we move to the right, another way to operate is through a hosting model. Notice how the dollars shrink on your operations and hardware. Continuing, moving to the right, we have software as a service, a single tenant. Cost gets better here to operate in this model. We advocate here the software as a service multi-tenant model, where many customers are using the same version of the software inside of their own tenant. So a few observations, right? Cloud platforms contain fewer technology stack components than what you'll see on premise, okay? More development resources can function and focus on functionality rather than spend time on regression testing and multiple technology stacks. It's just a better model to operate in. We've realized that the real value of cloud computing is not just lowering technology costs. This slide depicts that for sure, okay? But what should be high on your list is building new business models, building new innovation capabilities, right, inside this model. That's what we want you to take away from this slide. So I promised to talk about security and compliance, because every time you read something out there, there's threats to your data and privacy. Well, I've been reading now and again more data breaches with companies who have on-premise solutions. Now, it's not impossible for, security breach, right, for cloud companies, but we've seen them spending a multiple of what private companies do on security and compliance. It has to be done, right? Think about their operating model. Earlier I talked about the SSAE 16, about your risk control matrices, your internal controls. Factor all that in to changing and reviewing the old SAS 70 document. You're the obvious catalyst, okay, to support how knowledgeable finance professionals are better suited, right, to execute these principles. You can embrace with your business unit owners to help them better understand. So the new business capability needs. If you look at that blue circle, it typically started with your internal data, with your ERP, your CRM system, HRS. But we think your organization is going to change at the speed of business. As you scan your eyes to the right and you look at what Baker Tilly calls the dynamic enterprise, right? There's continuous scan about the business. There's extensive impact assessment that has to occur. There's the rapid deployment of not just technology, but regulation of changes in your workforce. I'll throw a couple examples out here of how other companies have been using external data. I'll talk about the video and YouTube explosion. How many videos reside at YouTube that are about or originated by your company? How do customers find your information about your products, your customer service team? That information, if you use it and extract it from the external market, you're going to be able to adopt dynamic enterprise by continuously scanning what's out there, what's being said, okay, understanding the impact and assessing, and then, again, change and innovate frequently. There's another idea that's being kicked around at Baker Tilly. We talk to our clients more about companies looking inwardly about themselves. How do you innovate? Now we also flip that coin over and say, how do you expect your service providers to innovate with you? Some of you on the phone might have heard of the concept of continuous internal auditing. We're kicking around the idea about continuous external auditing. So think about your service providers and how they might be able to innovate with you using cloud solutions. So trying to close out here and think about where is your organization today, and you look at the adoption trends of technology. Listen, it's the technology we're talking about is here. Okay? It's not the future. It's only growing in market mass and growth. The question you have to ask yourself is, where is your organization on this adoption curve? What technologies have you adopted? If you're looking for leveraging technology for strategic finance decisions, in order to be strategic, I think you have to be strategic with your adoption as well. So perform some self-assessment there. Let me close with some 3 key messages. As you can read them here, I want to talk about the role of finance. You're embarking on some new frontiers. Some of my colleagues just don't, they understand it, they don't want to embrace it, but if they don't embrace it, their business unit leaders are going to steamroll them over, and they're just going to start to behave differently in their business units because they want to innovate. So what I'm encouraging my colleagues out here in finance is to recognize that. The velocity of change is happening every day. Think about those 4 forces that I spoke about earlier. Then move into understanding the new business world for yourself. Right? How is your organization going to adopt? Change 301. Change in the cloud. What does it mean? And then with the dynamic enterprise, remember, you're continuously marketing, looking and scanning at information externally and internally. You should be looking at the impact and assessing, can we afford to do this? What happens if we don't? What about our competition? Competition continues to intensify with cloud solutions. Are we ready for the rapid deployment of technology and the business processes that go along with that? And with that, I thank you for your attendance and listening to the Baker Tilly ideas about leveraging technology for strategic finance decisions.
Thanks, Joe. That was great. A lot of food for thought for finance and related professionals out there. At this point, we are going to put out the first of our 2 polling questions. These are required if you're here for CPE credit. But even if you're not, statistically speaking, it'll be interesting to see what everyone has to say. This is a very simple question, but curious as to whether the finance organization of your company drives technology adoption beyond core accounting. This is that trend we spoke to earlier, where finance organizations are increasing their reach across the enterprise, but some companies have gone there and some have not. So we'd love to see what folks have to say. Also, I'll make note that we welcome your questions at any time using the question area of your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll do our best to get to all the questions that come our way during the Q&A period at the end of today's webinar. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead, go ahead and close down this first poll. And what I'd love to do is introduce our second speaker, Carey Brook. Carey is VP of Marketing at Host Analytics, and she manages Host Analytics product marketing activities across the board, which includes overseeing lead generation, PR, and analyst relations, amongst other functions. Carey has over 15 years of experience in the CPM space. Previously, she managed the highly successful release and launch of Hyperion Planning and subsequently ran product marketing for all of Hyperion's packaged applications. More recently, Carey was with Oracle, where she led the product management team responsible for all of the Oracle EPM planning products. Prior to working in the high-tech industry, Carey held multiple positions in finance and IT for large organizations such as Ciba Geigy and Unilever, and Carey is a chartered UK accountant. And with that, Carey, I'll ask you to take it away.
Thanks very much, John, and thank you to all of the attendees for giving us your time this morning. Hopefully you're getting some good information from myself and Joe. I actually want to start to look at some of the more practical implications of leveraging technology to elevate the strategic role of finance. And I think we talk a lot about the evolving role of finance and what that means to both you individually and also to the organizations that you run. And I'll give you some of my thoughts on that as we go through the presentation. So my slide here says companies suffer from poor business decisions. I think it's more actually that all business decision making can actually be improved. And I think within the finance department, I think we're always making these kind of fact-based decisions, right? We always have the numbers at our fingertips, but it's how does finance drive technology through the organization to really give those facts and those financial numbers to every single decision maker in the organization. And I think that's one of the major changes that we're seeing technology help with. You know, the pain that is created from the lack of technology and the lack of cohesiveness in the organization, you know, you always want to be looking at how do we grow, where do we invest, maybe we're in a cost reduction period. Should I hire people? Should I not? Should I push heads out? Should I pull heads in? What impact will all of that have on the business? We can't, as finance people, all be doing all of that analysis ourselves. That has to be driven out into the company. And because we can't often do this with antiquated technology, what happens is that, you know, a lot of execs have a lack of insight into their particular operational business. We very often see, you know, the variances to budget, especially the original budgets, are in some cases huge. It's very difficult to close the books, and even if we do close the books, say in our ERP, it's very difficult to even get the reports out of that. And, you know, quite honestly, with some of the more stringent controls around the disclosure process now, having a risky disclosure process can get us into all sorts of trouble in finance. So what is this evolving role of finance, and how is this change being seen? Well, you know, if I think back to my days working in finance, it was really hard to do anything but report and audit. You know, just getting the internal and external reports out was pretty difficult, and quite honestly, you know, looking at the data, really we only looked at it by cost center and account, for example, and some product grouping level revenue analysis. But it was extremely rigid in the reporting functionality, and really when it came down to it, finance was just struggling just to create finance results, not just a report on the financial results, no operational information. And what I've seen is that finances are, striving and achieving in many cases to become a business partner in the organization, and not just a partner as in providing the numbers for people, but really taking a seat at that decision-making table, becoming a key participant in the strategic decision-making process, because they're the ones providing, they're the actual custodians of data for the rest of the organization. In this way, we've become much more proactive, create much more real-time data, and the information becomes much more flexible. I can, for example, in my own business now as VP of Marketing, I actually need to look at my program costs by vendor and campaign type, because that's how I feed into my ROI calculations. Well, that requires a level of detail from our ERP system that nobody else requires. So we need a flexible enough reporting system that provides me with the information that I can really, as I said, make my fact-based decisions based on the cost and return of running programs. And what that means is I can use that data to then drive business results rather than just reporting on the financial information. And technology is one piece of this pie, right? But what I've seen is it can be a key enabler for that type of change in the role of finance. So what is success? If we evolve the role of finance, what does success actually look like? How do we define success? We've done a number of research studies, both ourselves and with independent research organizations, and the three key priorities for finance people from what we've heard is, first of all, scaling the organization. So scaling the finance department to meet the needs of the business going forward. We're clearly not going to scale by adding people, right? We're always being asked to do more with less people. And so how do we use technology to scale the finance department so that in 5 years, 10 years, we're still supporting the rapid needs of the business, the rapidly changing needs of the business? So, for example, my organization, my company, we're doubling in revenues every year. So what does our finance department do in order to really plan for the future? Well, what we did was use technology. We implemented 6 SaaS applications in finance in 6 months, and that was possible for us. And what that helped us do was set the foundation to scale for the future. Now, if you can scale your organization, it means that you can actually start to drive accountability out into other functions, right? Again, it's not just us that owns finance information. That finance information needs to get into the hands of the people that need it to get to the ultimate goal, which is better decision-making and more profitable decision-making. And what we've seen is that world-class companies are the ones really that do all of those 3 things. So what are some of the things then that are getting in the way of this? And this is sort of like a hierarchy of needs. This is really around what basic requirements do we have to meet before we can actually drive better performance? And you can see these build up. So the first thing is that we're using Excel spreadsheets, and what we need is we need one version of the truth, right? We're seeing all sorts of process errors, formula errors, so just the basic I hate spreadsheets list, right? So that's just the basic thing that we need to overcome. The second thing is most of the technology that we're using doesn't really have any out-of-the-box finance support. So a spreadsheet doesn't recognize that a debit's a debit and a credit's a credit, and that revenues are good and expenses are bad, right? So we have to build in that finance support, which is really difficult when you get to some difficult balance sheet and cash flow modeling processes. You need that kind of built-in support with your technology. So then if you've figured out the Excel issues and you've figured out the reporting deficiencies, then you can start to use that reporting and that out-of-the-box finance support to really start to look at variance analysis, ad hoc reports, and in many cases, dashboards as well. Once we've got that variance analysis in place and we can accurately and very easily begin to see, forecast versus actual or budget versus actual, then what we can do is use that information to then start to look at, well, what happens if, right? What happens if prices go up by X? What happens if raw material prices go up by Y? What happens if I push heads out one quarter in say, my sales and marketing department? So that whole idea of getting the core data correct, making sure your reports work, looking at your variances, really all drive to the scenario modeling process. And then what we can start to do is actually start to look at driving that top-down strategic plan into the operations of the business as well. And in that way, we can then actually integrate between financial and operational platforms. We can actually start to drive financial or fact-based decision-making in operations. We can actually start to drive operational data into finance as well, because just as operational folks need finance data, in finance we also need to understand the metrics behind the numbers as well. And what I've seen is if you sort out these basic needs, then you can actually start to drive performance in the organization as well as driving process efficiency. So this is really, again, where we start to look at, we're not just driving scalability and better processes, but we're also having a profit effect by doing that. And I'll go through some detailed information on that in a few moments. So how can technology help? Well, we need to take that spaghetti mess on the left-hand side and to have a closed-loop integrated platform when we're looking at budgeting, reporting, planning, and close and disclose. It means that we want one source of data, one source of the truth. We need it streamlined and integrated. We need people talking to each other, right? We need, for example, again, I'll use myself as a end user. I need to understand what the sales plan is, and if the sales plan changes, I need for that to reflect in my top-down plan around program spend, because those two things are directly linked. So I need to have my own models that really take the data that's in this integrated platform and that can spin off my own calculations and my own integrated platform, so I can really start to look at some of my more operational or detailed costs. This means that decision-making goes from kind of this clunky, slow, I see the impact of my decisions maybe every 6 months, to true real-time rolling forecasts and fact-based decision-making. And that's really how technology can help. So let's think about this in terms of integration. So integration, when we think about things like rolling forecasts, right, which I've heard many of you say, many of you want to move to rolling forecasts, where essentially you ignore kind of the annual end of fiscal year planning process, and you're constantly looking at 12, 18, or 24 months into the future. Well, integration is a key element to that, because you can't roll a forecast unless you very quickly get accurate actuals at the level of detail that you need to make decisions out of your source systems. Now, what's also changing is your source systems are not just an ERP anymore. They could be Salesforce, for example, or it could be a marketing automation system or a professional services automation system. And we need to be able to integrate our finance processes, not just with our finance source systems, but also our operational source systems too. It means that we can actually start to look at data across all organizations, and we can, as my example myself, I can actually begin to see transaction level detail that I need in order to drive better performance in my own area, to drive ROI from my program costs. What this means is that we're cutting out all those manual processes, and the example here is from our own CFO, Kelly Battles, where when we were using a combination of QuickBooks and spreadsheets, before we fully rolled out our own CPM solution, it actually took, every time she needed to make a change, she had to run that through QuickBooks, and it actually took her about 5 hours to reflect that change in the management reports. Now, with a fully integrated ERP, PSA, and Salesforce automation system, it actually takes 5 minutes to make those changes. And that's the kind of real-time updates that we all need. So the next area is around reporting. So we talked about integration. So what about reporting? Reporting is probably one of the most important pieces that's key for better decision making and much faster course corrections. And is obviously as well important for overall corporate visibility. We use our reporting system to both track internally our variance analysis and to have that kind of cross-functional collaboration, but we also send exactly the same reporting pack to our board, which is essentially our external reporting. So this is an excellent example of putting technology to work in the FP&A environment. So we use a reporting tool that allows us to produce comprehensive packs, as I said, and that doesn't just have data from our own CPM system. It actually also has data in there from web content, from external content, external drivers. It might pull in information as well from some Excel spreadsheets that we might still be using. The beauty of it is that when changes need to be made, it's automatically reflected in this, in this reporting pack that we have. Technology does that automatically. And we've actually reduced the tail of the disclose part of the reporting process considerably. There's no more cutting and pasting into PowerPoints. And this is a great example of using technology to automate and reduce cycle times in that close and disclose process. And if you actually, the best thing about reducing the close and disclose process is really, so by the time you kind of get into execution mode and replanning, rolling forecasts, reforecasting mode, you're actually not eating into that execution phase at all with all of your analysis of past results. You can do that quickly, easily, and move on to that execution and that decision-making cycle, which is the most important piece. Looking at actual results is great, but what do we do with those actual results? How do we change our behavior in the future to really reflect what's happened in the past? So I like to think of it, I work for a technology company, so of course I think that technology is the panacea of everything, right? But, we do recognize that, in fact, the cloud makes a difference, right? It does make a difference. It doesn't necessarily make a difference in all aspects, right? So when we look at using technology, you should all think about how easy is it to use, how easy is it to customize, how good is the performance, and it obviously has to have the right functionality. Now, the cloud doesn't really necessarily help with any of those things. That's really dependent on who you buy the technology from and what the product looks like and how it performs. I would argue, though, that when we start to look at costs, and Joe had touched on this as well, and getting access to the latest functionality, I would argue that is definitely enhanced by cloud technology. It's still, driven by the product that you use and the technology you use and who you buy the software from, but these things are definitely, and I think we can all agree that the TCO of a cloud implementation is way less than the TCO of an on-premise implementation, if only just because of the setup costs, let alone the ongoing maintenance of the application. So when we start to look at some of the other requirements, some of the other areas that you should look at, we actually start to look at what are those things that are really being driven by cloud technology. Well, the first area is integrated external content. So what's important is not just to look at scalability internally, not just to look at how we can use our internal data better, but how do we start to use drivers from outside the organization? How do we start to look at, I don't know, oil prices, for example, or interest rates, or growth rates? How do we get that external data into our internal processes? And this is really where cloud technology comes in. It's very easy to integrate external data for us to actually provide you with external data in order for you to better run your business. The other thing is getting the right people on the right problems and integrating those silos of information. We also, cloud technology helps us not only to provide you with the best functionality at any point in time, but also allows us to monitor the performance of your internal processes, and so we can make sure that you're optimizing the use of the technology to really, again, drive better adoption, accountability in your organization. So what are some of the results when you get this right? Well, our example is when we actually implemented, as I said, the 6 SaaS applications in 6 months. We cut down our close and disclose process, which was at best around 10 days. We actually cut that down to a 4-day process, and you can see there that, how we did that. And that was a combination of cloud technology. We only implement cloud technology at our company, and that's where we see some of these 60% reduction in close and disclose, so we can do the more interesting bits like analyze and forecast. And also some external data on this as well. Aberdeen Group did a survey about a year and a half ago, and it looked at how best-in-class companies, by implementing technology, what were some of the benefits that best-in-class companies got from implementing technology. And then it actually compared that to companies who use cloud technology. So you can see best-in-class companies, got a lot out of putting technology in, right? 47% saw improvements in the standardization of workflow. 14% saw improvements in budget accuracy, and 21% improvement in profitability. But by implementing cloud technology, the results are actually enhanced from that over and above what world-class organizations have been achieving. And it's that right-hand graph that we really like to look at. And if we think back to the process and performance improvements, this is really where the performance improvements come in. So I'm going to hand it back to John now, and he's going to hand it over, I think, to Q&A.
Yes, I will, except we have one more poll question, which I'm going to go ahead and get to real quickly. So I'm launching the poll. Also, simple question. Once again, reminder for anyone who's here for CPE credit, please do take this. And even for those who are not here for CPE credit, please do take this. And we're actually going to take a quick look at the results of these 2 polls to start the Q&A here. And a reminder, if you want to ask questions of Joe and or Carey, please ask your questions via the GoToWebinar control panel. And we'll get that going in just a moment. I'm going to give about 5 more seconds here for this poll question, and we'll shut it down and take a quick look. Okay, so we'll do that. I'm shutting that down right now, and let's go back and revisit the first polling question, which was, does the finance organization of your company drive technology adoption beyond core accounting? And it's roughly 60-40. Joe, is this what you guys typically find when you go in or are talking to clients, finance organizations?
John, we're seeing, different companies with innovation personalities, non-innovation personalities. I think it runs the gamut, quite honestly. I'm a little surprised here beyond core accounting. So I guess there's still great opportunity here to help companies move to the upper scale there.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised myself. Carey, are you guys seeing a trend towards, I mean, obviously at your company, you guys are all cloud. I think the finance organization drives a lot of technology beyond core accounting. What do you see with your clients?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're actually, one of the trends that I'm seeing is that finance is almost becoming, they understand the need for auditing finance data and providing, those checks and balances when they're providing financial information to folks. And so I think the operational guys are now looking to finance to really drive some of that audit and control and those checks and balances in operational information as well. So they're sort of becoming this custodian of data that might be operational data. And I think that is how they're driving technology adoption is by putting those controls in place to make sure that data coming out of Salesforce automation or sales automation or marketing automation is good data. And so I think that's the role they're playing.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, great. And let's take a quick look at the second poll as well before we jump into live questions here. Is moving to the cloud a strategic imperative for your company? And once again, about a 60-40 split. And Joe, I'll ask you again, is there a trend here, or are some companies just saying, we're happy with what we've got, and the cloud isn't offering me anything compelling enough to change?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind, John. One, I think companies over time have invested a lot with their on-premise solution, okay? And some companies we've met said, listen, it's working, I don't want to change it, even though we talked to them about the costs and the operating model. Those companies who do want to change are because they want to take advantage of innovation. They want to change how they work. I think another aspect here, John, is education. So you only know what you know, right? And until you can speak with others, other companies, go to your industry groups and understand how their colleagues are moving to the cloud and changing not only their career but the company's outlook, I think is important too. So I think it's twofold, right? Investment, but there is a way to still get a return on investment. In addition to that, education.
Gotcha. Carey, instead of asking you to comment on this, we actually have a question that's right up your alley. So from the audience, let's go ahead and move to that here. Can you expand on your experience reducing the close and reporting, and specifically they're asking about Q&K filing, by not only automating the transactions, but by automating the notes and all of the supporting schedules and documentation? How do companies go about doing that effectively?
Yeah, so you need a level of flexibility in your technology that again is a repeatable process. So my advice on that would be don't put anything in place that actually needs to be rebuilt every month, especially with things like additional notes and the more collaborative aspects of it as well. So put in place something that's repeatable. And then make sure that you are providing data into that close and disclose process that you both need. Look at the end game, right? So you need data for external purposes and you need data for internal purposes. Start at the end game and work back, and then figure out how you can get that data from your source systems.
Mm-hmm. In an automated, repeatable fashion, so human beings don't have to touch it all every month, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Here's we're running short on time. I'm going to ask a really brief response here from you, Joe. How do you change the mindset of the company from one of misinformation of the cloud to one of the value of the cloud? That's almost a loaded question in and of itself. I think there is a lot of misinformation about the cloud, a lot of misunderstanding about the cloud. How do you best go about turning that around, getting people educated and behind effective cloud technology? And I'll just ask for a really quick answer from you.
Right, and I can talk for hours on that, but so very briefly, it's really in examples, all right? Sharing examples with others from our clients and how we're helping clients really rethink how they go to market, how they work, right? It's how you use information. Seeing is believing, right? Or believing is seeing. So we take that type of vein because they need proof, right? So that's how we've been going about it.
Gotcha. And we're far enough down the cloud adoption curve, certainly by this time, that you could look at Fortune 50 companies adopting left, right, and center, and I think that's sage advice. Go with facts, point to companies that are already using it, specifically companies that might be in your industry space who maybe were pioneers 6 years ago, but now it's not that pioneering actually. Companies just need to figure out whether it applies to them, and it doesn't apply 100% of the time, and whether it can be leveraged. Well, with that, I want to quickly move into closing this out, being mindful of everyone's time. I'll remind you here, if you have any questions about CPE credit, please email Tanya Walsh. You can see her email address. And after this webinar, you'll be prompted to take a short survey, 1 minute. We'd really appreciate your feedback. Plus, we make it really easy there to request a direct connection with either Carey or Joe, and we're happy to help with that connection. Finally, of course, thank you. Wonderful not only support but also content and speakers from Baker Tilly and Host Analytics, two companies that are really steeped in the discussion today and the issues with corporate technology and moving to the cloud and how to make finance and accounting organizations more effective. I want to thank Carey and Joe specifically for your time and attention this morning. Thanks a lot, guys. And beyond that, I will say thanks to everyone who attended today. We hope to see you soon on another Performative event, and we hope to see you soon at performative.com online. Everyone have a great week, and I will go ahead and shut down the webinar now, and you will be presented with that brief survey. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.